The Calthari Empire did not believe in peace. To them, the universe was a giant ladder, and you climbed it by stepping on the necks of everyone else. They were massive, four-armed creatures with skin like natural armor. They had conquered thousands of worlds, turning brave warriors into servants and proud planets into dust. When their scouts first found Earth, the Calthari High Command laughed. They had never seen a species so lazy. "Look at them," General Varkas spat, pointing his claw at a holographic screen. "They have no massive warships. They have no planetary shields. They don't even carry swords or blasters in the streets. They spend all day sitting in comfortable chairs, staring at glowing screens in dark rooms. Their thumbs move fast, but their bodies are soft." For 200 years, the galactic arena, a place where species fought to prove their dominance, had sent invitations to Earth. Every single time, the humans sent back the same polite refusal: "No thanks, we're busy." The Calthari assumed this was cowardice. They figured humans were a prey species that had simply gotten lucky with technology. In the Calthari history books, if you didn't fight, it meant you couldn't fight. They decided Earth would be their next trophy, an easy weekend project for their youngest soldiers. General Varkas stood on the bridge of his flagship, the World Eater. As it exited hyperspace near Earth's moon, he wanted to make this dramatic. He opened a wide-channel broadcast to every screen on Earth. "People of Earth," Varkas boomed, his voice echoing through every smartphone, laptop, and billboard from New York to Tokyo. "I am General Varkas of the Calthari Empire. Your era of laziness is over. Your planet is now the property of the Empire. You have 1 hour to surrender your leaders and your resources. If you resist, we will turn your atmosphere into fire. What is your choice?" He waited for the screaming. He waited for the world leaders to beg for mercy. He waited for the global panic. Minutes passed. The silence was awkward. Finally, a small window popped up on the general's main screen. It wasn't a president or a king. It was a young man wearing a headset, eating a bag of neon orange chips. He looked annoyed, like someone who had just been interrupted during a nap. Hey," the human said, squinting at the camera. "General Varkas, right? Listen, man, your timing is really bad. We're right in the middle of the grand finals. The servers are full, and the bracket is live. Can you, hold on for a bit, or just send an email? We'll get back to you in about 48 hours when the tournament is over." The general's jaw dropped. "A tournament? You are facing total extinction, and you want me to wait for a game? It's not just a game, dude. There's a $200 million prize pool on the line," the human replied, shrugging. "Anyway, I gotta go. My team is waiting. Peace out." The screen went black. Varkas turned to his officers, his face turning a dark shade of angry purple. "They think this is a joke. They think their chips and screens will save them." He slammed his fist onto the control panel. "Launch the invasion pods! I want this planet silenced. Do not take prisoners. If they want to play games, we will show them how the Calthari play." Thousands of black, spike-covered pods shot out of the Calthari ships, screaming through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. The aliens expected to land and find a world of terrified people hiding under their beds. They expected to see a few weak police officers with tiny handguns. They had no idea that at that very second, billions of humans were putting on their headsets, adjusting their monitors, and cracking their knuckles. The tournament wasn't stopping. It was just changing maps. The sky over New York, London, and Tokyo didn't turn black with smoke. It turned black with Calthari drop ships. They looked like giant, jagged obsidian needles piercing the clouds. As the ships touched the ground, heavy hydraulic doors hissed open. Thousands of Calthari shock troops stepped out, their biological armor pulsing with a dull red light. They held plasma rifles that could melt through a bank vault in seconds. General Varkas watched the video feed from his flagship. He expected to see a massacre. He expected to see humans running in circles, screaming for their lives. Instead, he saw nothing. The streets were eerily quiet. No police sirens, no military tanks, just empty parked cars and the wind blowing trash across the asphalt. It was like the entire human race had just vanished into thin air. "Are they all in the basements?" Varkas whispered, confused. "Do they think hiding under a house will stop a Calthari blade?" Then he heard a sound. A low, buzzing hum like a swarm of angry bees. Thousands of tiny shadows began to emerge from the rooftops. They weren't fighter jets. They were small, quadcopter drones, the kind humans used to film weddings or deliver packages. But these had been modified. They had sleek carbon fiber frames and tiny, high-velocity kinetic railguns mounted on the bottom. The Calthari soldiers laughed. One commander, a massive beast named Crag, stepped forward and pointed his plasma rifle at a drone. "Is this their defense? These toys?" He fired a shot, but the drone didn't just explode. It performed a barrel roll, so fast it looked like a glitch in reality. The drone dipped under the plasma bolt, zipped behind Crag's head, and fired a single, glowing spike directly into the weak point of his neck armor. Crag fell instantly. He didn't even have time to scream. Wet. That wasn't an AI calculation. Varkas stammered, leaning closer to his screen. No computer moves that erratically. That was instinct. Miles away, in a dark bedroom in Ohio, a 19-year-old named Leo was sitting in a high-tech haptic chair. He had a half-eaten slice of pizza on his desk and a can of energy drink in the cup holder. On his screen, a UI showed his current stats. Whoa, did you said into his headset. The hitbox on these lizard guys is huge. They're basically walking loot boxes. Nice one, Leo. A voice crackled in his ear. It was his friend Sarah, sitting in her own room in London. I've got 3 of them trapped in an alleyway. I'm going to drop a care package on them. On the London streets, Sarah's drone released a small canister. The Kalthari soldiers below looked up, confused. The canister exploded into a cloud of freezing liquid nitrogen, turning the warriors into statues. Seconds later, another drone flew by and shattered them with a single sonic blast. Easy, Sarah typed into the global defense chat. Across the world, the defense grid had gone live. It wasn't a military operation led by generals in suits. It was a global server. The world's governments had realized years ago that they couldn't train soldiers fast enough to beat aliens. So, they built a system that turned the invasion into the world's biggest multiplayer game. The Kalthari were confused. They were fighting ghosts. Every time they tried to surround a group of drones, the drones would perform impossible maneuvers, drifting around corners, using bunny hops to dodge fire, and baiting the aliens into traps. In the Kalthari High Command, the alerts were screaming, "General, we are losing Squad 4 in Sector 7. Be what? Heavy artillery." Varkas yelled. "No, sir. By a group of drones painted neon pink they are. They are dancing over the bodies of our fallen soldiers." Varkas watched in horror as a group of 5 drones hovered over a dead Kalthari captain, moving up and down in a rhythmic motion. He didn't know what teabagging was, but he could feel the disrespect in his soul. "They aren't afraid," Varkas realized, his voice trembling. "They aren't even taking this seriously. To them, my elite warriors are just content." Suddenly, a massive notification appeared on every screen in the world, including the Kalthari bridge. It was a global leaderboard. At the top, it said the humans weren't just winning. They were competing with each other to see who could win with the most style. The first wave of the invincible Kalthari Empire hadn't even made it past the first block of the city. The gamers were just getting warmed up. The Kalthari Empire had a very specific way of fighting. To them, war was a sacred, terrifying ritual. Their soldiers were trained to stare into the eyes of their enemies, to feel the heat of the blast, and to respect the heavy weight of death. When they invaded a planet, they expected to hear the sounds of a civilization breaking, the weeping of the defeated, the frantic prayers to silent gods, and the desperate pleas for a ceasefire. But as the smoke cleared over the first few hours of the invasion of Earth, General Varkas realized something was deeply, horribly wrong. He was watching a live feed from a Kalthari elite squad in the middle of a city park. His best warriors, men who had survived the lava pits of Ignis IV, were pinned down behind a decorative stone fountain. They weren't being shot at by tanks. They were being harassed by 3 small, hovering drones that were painted with bright, smiling yellow faces. One Kalthari soldier tried to make a break for it. Before he could take 3 steps, a drone bounced a gravity grenade off a nearby tree trunk. The grenade didn't explode. It hummed, caught the soldier in a localized physics field, and launched him 50 feet into the air. While he was mid-air, a second drone spun 360 degrees in a dizzying circle and sniped the soldier's jetpack. The soldier tumbled into a trash can. The drones didn't move in for the kill. They stayed back, vibrating in a way that looked suspiciously like laughter. "Intercept their comms," Varkas roared at his tech officer. "I want to hear their battle plans. I want to know who is commanding these units. There must be a grand strategist behind this precision." The tech officer's scales turned a pale, sickly green. "Sir, I have the audio, but it makes no sense." Varkas put on the headset. He expected to hear a general shouting coordinates or a president giving a speech about freedom. Instead, he heard a chaotic mess of voices that sounded like a rowdy lunchroom. "Bro, did you see that bounce? Total clip material," a voice squeaked. "Stop camping the fountain, you lizard freaks. Get out here and fight." Another voice shouted, followed by the sound of someone loudly crunching on snacks. "LMAO, look at his armor. It's so bulky." "Definitely a skill issue," Imagine having zero mobility in 2026. GGWP, this level is way too easy. When does the boss fight start? Varkas dropped the headset as if it had burned him. Skill issue. Boss fight. What are they talking about? He looked at his data screens. His invincible army was being dismantled by people who weren't even sweating. He saw a recording of a human girl in a bedroom in Seoul. She was sitting in a chair, her eyes darting across 6 different monitors. She was controlling a fleet of 20 drones with her left hand while using her right hand to type "EZ" into a global chat. She wasn't a soldier. She was a high school student who hadn't even finished her homework. The realization hit Varkas like a physical blow to the stomach. The Kalthari had spent thousands of years perfecting the act of war. They practiced with swords, they built bigger guns. But humans had spent the last 50 years perfecting the logic of war. They had spent billions of hours in virtual worlds where death was just a respawn away. They had simulated every possible combat scenario 1,000,000 times over. While the Kalthari were training their bodies, humans were training their brains to process combat data at speeds no biological mind should be able to handle. To a Kalthari soldier, a grenade was a terrifying weapon of death. To a human gamer, a grenade was a tool, used to manipulate the game's physics engine for a cool play. They aren't avoiding the galactic arena because they are peaceful, Varkas whispered, his voice trembling with a new kind of fear. They are avoiding it because the arena is too slow for them. It's too boring. He looked out the window of his ship at the blue planet below. He had thought he was bringing a nightmare to Earth. Now, he realized he had accidentally walked into a room full of professional predators who had been waiting for a new challenge. On the screens below, the humans started doing something even more terrifying. They weren't just defending anymore. They were starting to farm the Kalthari for points. They were letting the aliens call for reinforcements just so they could have more targets to hit. General, the tech officer whispered. A new message is scrawling across the human internet. It's being translated into our language. Varkas looked. The message was simple, repeated by millions of users across the globe. Finally, some new DLC. Thanks for the content, Kalthari. Varkas realized then that his empire wasn't a conqueror. To the humans, the Kalthari Empire was just a limited-time event, with really good rewards. The Kalthari High Command expected a long, grinding war of attrition. They thought that even if their ground forces were struggling, their massive space fleet would keep the humans trapped on Earth. They were wrong. The humans weren't trapped, they were just waiting for the crafting menu to unlock. As the first Kalthari dropships were destroyed, human scavenger teams swarmed the wreckage. These weren't scientists in lab coats. They were guys in hoodies who had spent thousands of hours in sandbox building games. They didn't care about the scientific mystery of alien metal. They only cared about 2 things, stats and modding. Yo, this alien engine has a crazy power-to-weight ratio, a human engineer shouted into his radio, pulling a glowing core from a crashed Kalthari scout ship. If we slap this onto a Falcon 9 rocket and overclock the cooling system, we can cut the travel time to Mars to 3 minutes. In less than 3 hours, the world witnessed the most chaotic industrial revolution in history. Using 3D printers and jury-rigged alien tech, humans began transforming everything they owned into weapons. A heavy-duty cargo hauler was stripped of its paint and fitted with 5 stolen Kalthari plasma cannons. A billionaire's private yacht was covered in scrap metal and turned into a long-range railgun sniper. By the 4th hour, the humans didn't just have a defense force. They had a fleet. General Varkas watched his radar in disbelief. A swarm of thousands of small, mismatched ships was rising from Earth. They weren't flying in neat, military formations. They were moving in a chaotic, buzzing cloud. Some were painted bright neon pink. Others had giant, googly eyes painted on the hull. One ship was literally a giant metal cube with engines strapped to every side. It was called the SS de Udamont BRO. They are coming right for us, a Kalthari pilot screamed over the radio. They aren't even slowing down. They're going at maximum thrust. It's a suicide mission. But it wasn't a suicide mission. The human pilots, veterans of space sim games, knew something the Kalthari didn't. Physics is just a suggestion if you're brave enough. As the Kalthari fleet opened fire with their heavy lasers, the human ships didn't fly straight. They performed vector drifts. They used their thrusters to spin their ships 180 degrees while still moving forward at full speed, firing their guns backward before flipping back around. It was a maneuver that would make a normal pilot vomit, but these humans were strapped into G-force compensating chairs they'd built in their garages. They're glitching our targeting computers, the Kalthari tactical officer yelled. They keep moving in patterns that our AI can't predict. It's like they're lag-switching reality. One human pilot, a 25-year-old pizza delivery driver named Kyle, found a weak spot in the Calthari flagship's shield frequency. He didn't send a report to a general. He just posted the coordinates in a public Discord server. Hey guys, if you hit the left engine intake at a 45-degree angle, the shield hitbox disappears for 2 seconds. Kyle typed. Within minutes, 500 human ships converged on that exact spot. They weren't using tactics, they were exploiting a bug. The Calthari World Eater, a ship that had destroyed entire civilizations, began to groan and buckle under the focused fire of 1,000 noobs. General Varkas watched as his fleet was torn apart. The humans weren't just winning, they were speedrunning. They were skipping the cutscenes of diplomacy and going straight for the final boss. They bypassed the Calthari outer colonies, ignored the defensive moons, and used gravity slingshots to launch themselves directly toward the Calthari homeworld. Why are they moving so fast? Varkas asked, his voice shaking. Don't they want to occupy our lands? Don't they want our gold? The intercepted human comms gave him the answer. If we finish the campaign in under 6 hours, we get the Interstellar Invader achievement and a gold skin for our ships. Go! Go! Varkas sank into his chair. To the Calthari, this was a war for survival. To the humans, it was a time challenge. They weren't attacking to conquer. They were attacking because they wanted to see their names at the top of a leaderboard. The Calthari Empire had spent 10,000 years building a wall of fear around the galaxy. The humans had just found a way to jump right over it. The Calthari homeworld, Calthar Prime, was a fortress. It was surrounded by 1,000 defense platforms and a great wall of orbital mines. For generations, the Calthari believed this world was unreachable. But today, the sky didn't turn dark with a traditional invasion force. Instead, it filled with flickering blue lights as thousands of human ships teleported into the atmosphere using a reckless, unproven physics exploit. Before a single Calthari cannon could fire, every screen on the planet, from the Emperor's Golden Palace to the smallest street sign, flickered to life. A giant, pixelated GG appeared on the screens, followed by a timer counting down from 60 seconds. The Calthari Emperor, a giant warrior with scars from 100 battles, sat on his throne. He watched the timer. He knew his fleet was gone. He knew his invincible shields had been bypassed by humans who treated his defense grid like a puzzle game. He didn't wait for the countdown to hit 0. He opened a channel to the lead human ship. Enough! The Emperor roared, his voice heavy with defeat. I surrender. Take our gold, take our fuel. Just tell me how. A small shuttle landed in the palace courtyard. Out stepped the human ambassador. He wasn't wearing heavy power armor or carrying a plasma sword. He was wearing a comfortable hoodie, a pair of jeans, and a headset resting around his neck. He looked like he had just finished a long session of a video game. The Emperor looked down at the small, soft human. We have spent thousands of years studying the art of the kill, the Emperor whispered. We have blood on 1,000 battlefields. You have no scars. You have no standing army. Yet, your children fly ships better than my aces. Your engineers build weapons in hours that should take decades. How did you learn to fight like monsters without ever seeing a real war? The ambassador reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, glowing handheld console. He tapped the screen, and a tiny character on the display jumped over a spiked pit. We didn't hate war, Emperor, the ambassador said with a calm smile. We just figured out how to make it fun. We realized a long time ago that if you make something a game, humans will spend billions of hours trying to perfect it. We weren't hiding for 200 years. We were training in our simulators. We've fought aliens just like you in our games for 30 years. To be honest, your AI patterns were a bit predictable. You move exactly like the boss from a game we released back in 2012. The Emperor stared at the tiny screen. A game. You treated our invasion as a game. The hardest part was the lag, the ambassador joked, shrugging. But seriously, you're lucky. If you had attacked us during the summer holidays, our players would have been online. You only had to deal with the casuals today. The peace treaty was signed that afternoon. It was the most unusual document in galactic history. The Calthari weren't forced to pay in gold or land. Instead, they were forced to join the Intergalactic Sports League. The humans realized that the Calthari were actually very good at strategy. They just needed a better platform than real-life genocide. 6 months later, the galaxy had changed. The Calthari Empire was no longer a threat to peace. They were too busy trying to climb the ranked ladders of Earth's most popular games. War had become obsolete because competitive gaming was much more addictive, and nobody actually had to die. The final shot of the story shows the great Calthari Emperor sitting in his high-tech gaming chair. His forearms are moving at lightning speed across a massive keyboard. He is sweating, his eyes wide with focus. Suddenly, a defeat message flashes in bright red across his screen. A small voice chat icon pops up in the corner. "Get wrecked, lizard man," a high-pitched, bubbly voice says over the speakers. The Emperor slams his fist onto his desk, nearly breaking it. "I am the conqueror of the 7 moons. How can a 4-year-old human with a juice box beat me at a capture, the flag match?" He looks at the leaderboard. The human toddler, Lil Timmy 2022, is at the top. The Emperor sighs, cracks his knuckles, and clicks the button for. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Calthari. They had given them a new obsession. The galaxy was finally at peace, not because the fighting had stopped, but because everyone was too busy trying to get a demon rank.